Hello, my name is Lynne Marshall. I've been collecting genealogy documents since 1976 and writing books about my family heritage since 2016. This talk is entitled DNA to the Rescue, Unraveling the Mystery of Ella Roy and Robert Carter's Parents. Early in 2024, I was halfway through writing about an epic historical nonfiction journey. It included my great-grandmother Ella Roy's formerly enslaved family in Virginia, Native American cultures, and the ringmaster, politician Columbus Delano, whose influence in Washington, D.C. positively and negatively impacted the lives of both races. But I soon learned that I didn't have enough factual information about my black family to finish that book. I had to start over from step one, using traditional genealogical research methods combined with DNA analysis to find the truth. I always start every family heritage project in the same way. After choosing one person to anchor my investigation on, I determine my research questions, what I want to learn about Ella Roy Carter in this instance. That includes her parents, her siblings, and her descendants. I interviewed new-to-me family members and learned what they knew about Grammie Carter. We will begin with basic genealogy steps, such as building a tree with proof documents enhanced by DNA techniques from family supertesters. We will briefly explore Freedmen's Bureau records, then visit DNA techniques to develop conclusions about Ella's parents. My goal isn't collecting genealogy documents. I did that for 40 years without doing anything with that information, except put it in a box and look at it maybe every couple of months. My goal is to leave a written legacy of family research to the world. That means writing books that include the documents, analysis, and memorable stories about the ancestors I'm studying. We don't know how artificial intelligence may help or hinder history research in the future. Handing a book to my family, storing them in libraries and bookstores is my goal. So day number 1, I create a book template using Microsoft Word. I structure the outline with the normal pages one finds in a genealogy book, such as the title, copyright page, dedication page, table of contents. There's usually an introduction in nonfiction books, and however many chapters you have, appendices, a bibliography, and endnotes for your citations. You would also have an About the Author page. So I actually open up a new Microsoft Word document and I build in pages like what you see on this slide. So I figure out who I'm gonna write the book about. I've got a copyright page, as you can see, a dedication page. You can put a poem, a picture, or you can leave page 4 blank. You've got a table of contents. I like to put a family tree in my family heritage books, but you don't have to. And then I always have an introduction. The introduction is super important. That's where I list my research questions, and that will keep me on track, and it will let the reader know what the book is going to be about. I'll have several chapters in here. And anyway, so this is what I do. Day 1, I set up an outline. It's a structure. It's a blank. It just has these headings at the top. And then I fill in those pages as I get the information. That's how I start every single book. And it really works because that is my real book. Once you get all of your research, your documents, your photos, if you want to put them in there, you actually just save it to a PDF, then you upload it to a self-publisher like Amazon's Kindle, and then they print out a book for you. It's really simple and it's almost free. So this is how I write my books, and this is how I start every day, which normally every project starts on October 1st of every year. The ancestors have mandated that I write 10 books in 10 years, and I'm almost done. This particular book about Ella Roy is my 9th book, and next year in 2026 it will be The Myers to Madagascar. So anyway, but this is how I start books. They may not help you, but I think it really does help. It helps you organize the information that you're collecting. It helps you build your story as you're doing the research, and it really is quite useful, actually. Hopefully you'll try it. I suggest developing specific research questions about what we want to learn about a particular ancestor, like Ella Roy Carter. I include my research questions up front in a book introduction to help me stay on track. Each research question will become a separate chapter in the book. My goals are always to find one more generation than I already know, including their siblings, their descendants, their enslavers, and whether DNA can help me find more documents that prove my theories. I started with what I already knew about Ella from my mom and mom's first cousins, Joanne and Kenora. For this talk, I'll concentrate on question number 5, for which I use DNA to help find answers. Who were Ella Roy's true parents? I am so very excited. I just have to give this a quick plug. Finding Grammie's Secrets. I was able to self-publish it in early December 2025, and it goes into a lot more depth than what we're going to be able to talk about in this case study. So if you're interested in finding out how to find the secrets from your ancestors, especially the ones that don't want to talk about how they got their Tiffany lamps in their paid-off house and stuff like that. But anyway, this is my latest book, Finding Grammie's Secrets. A Black genealogist discovers the untold story behind a family legacy. It is available on Amazon and other online bookstores. Let's take a few minutes on the basics. First, build your family tree by interviewing family and collecting documents. The red font on this tree, on the left side of this tree, shows my maternal Roy and Carter family lines. This is me on the bottom of the tree trunk. My mom was Mary Carter. Her parents were Pearl Williams and Arthur Carter. Grandpa Arthur's parents were Ella Roy and Robert Carter. I'm going to share some of the circuitous routes I had to take to try to arrive at supportable conclusions, and DNA was an important component. Who were their parents? Well, it's simple, Kathy. Just look at Ella and Robert's death certificates to see who was listed as their parents. Duh! Okay, just give me a minute to read this slide. Ideally, you will identify at least 3 documents that prove the lineage of each person in your tree. So my birth certificate and mom and dad's death certificates and an obituary should prove that I am their legal daughter. Gather as many of the above documents as possible to prove each generation in your tree until you reach a brick wall, which is where I was at the beginning of this project. My great-grandmother Ella Roy was born in Alexandria, Virginia in 1866, 1 year after slavery was abolished, and she died in Mount Vernon, Knox County, Ohio in 1962. Who were Ella's parents? Her death certificate says unknown. Ella's husband, Robert Carter, the most common name in Virginia, he was allegedly born in the District of Columbia in 1859. He died in Knox County, Ohio in 1909. Robert's dad was listed as W.M. Carter, presumably that's for William Carter, whose birthplace is, you guessed it, unknown. Robert's mother is unknown. At least I have a possible 2 times great-grandfather named William Carter. I found dozens of possible Carter family matches in District of Columbia city directories and 1860 to 1880 census records, but which one is the correct Carter family? Now, I spend a lot of time in the book sharing my theories of parentage and specific documents I investigated. They may help, but we don't have time to go into all of them today. I checked the 1860, 1870, and 1880 censuses at Mount Vernon, Ohio. I found a William Carter who died there in 1886. Bingo! I also found an 1880 agricultural schedule for farmer William Carter. The 1876-77 city directory indicates a William Carter was working as a laborer. His residence was on North Catherine Street near the main square in Mount Vernon, Ohio. The 1883 city directory listed 9 Carters in Mount Vernon, Ohio, as shown here. My great-grandfather, Robert Carter, was working and perhaps living as a servant at 405 East Gambier Street. That was the home of C.F. Cooper, who, with his brother, built a steel manufacturing plant where several of my maternal relatives worked through the mid-1900s. Can DNA help me prove whether or not this William Carter was my Robert's father? Let's see. Excited, I built a tree for William Carter in Knox County, Ohio, to the present day. I wanted to learn whether they had any ancestors in the District of Columbia, where Robert Carter was allegedly born, or if they had folks in Ohio, Maryland, and/or Virginia. I added my Robert Carter as William's son in our Ancestry.com tree. Then I included unverified, brick wall, and actively researching tags for the online tree. I wanted to warn others not to copy my theoretical information to their trees. It is important to let others know that you're testing theories of parentage in your public tree. What's in a name? What's in a name? I found a few matches to my Uncle Dale Carter and Logs and Logsdons from Virginia. Since many families seem to use the same given names from generation to generation, I compared the names from Sarah Logsdon and Richard Carter's tree at the left. See the black in the left. You see Sarah Logsdon at the top, and then at the bottom you'll see several red boxes for Richard Carter, and then there's a William Carter, there's an Elizabeth Carter, a Mary Carter, and a Sarah Carter. I wanted to see if those names were repeated in my direct lines. So the center one, under Robert and Ella Carter, those are the ones that I'm writing this book about, you'll see one red box, and that's Richard Carter, so Richard Albert. So the name Albert becomes pertinent in my Roy family, and we'll see about him a little bit later. The third set on the right in blue are Arthur and Pearl Carter. Those are my grandparents. So you'll see a Sarah in red, a Mary, that's my mother's name. You'll see a George William, and you'll see Elizabeth. So there are some names that are repeated. Does that mean that the Sarah Logsdon and the William Carter that I found in Mount Vernon, does that mean that we're all family? No. It's something to look at, but it's not a slam dunk of anything, is it? So I use DNA from our super testers. What I mean by that are the ones that are generally the elders, generally the ones that are in the line that I want to test. And I got their DNA, got DNA from 19 people, but the super testers are my 84-year-old Uncle Dale Carter, that's Mom's brother, and my elder second cousins, Kenora, who's 81, and Joanne, who's 1 year older than me, 68. So they're closer in age to the ancestors, but most importantly, they knew the most about Ella Roy. One of them lived right next to her, and so they know the most about her. We have tested with all the major DNA testing companies, Ancestry.com, 23andMe.com, FamilyTreeDNA.com, MyHeritage.com, and WikiTree.com. GEDmatch.com is a free third-party company that lets you compare the DNA results from any of the above companies. So choose from the living folks whose DNA results will give you the best matches to the ancestors you are researching. I call those the super testers. All right, so Ancestry.com has a tool called Throughline, and it helps users visualize potential family tree connections with their DNA matches by comparing their family tree to other public family trees on Ancestry. So I know other people don't say this, but as far as I know, Throughline looks at your actual blood relatives, and they look at the trees of those blood relatives, and they try to determine who your common ancestors are. Now, the big flaw in Throughline that people object to is that you're depending on everybody's tree to be correct. Mine is not correct. And I tell people up front, I warn them, my tree is not correct. So don't take what Through Lines tells you as gospel. You've got to find documents that really make sure that it's correct. So double check their facts before adding any information to your tree. But here's why I love Through Lines. It gives me hints on where to look further for proof documents. So Through Lines found 3 people whose DNA matches my Uncle Dale, but they all had the surname Logsdons. And those people were from Maryland and Virginia in their family trees. They didn't have any Carters, so something's a little fishy here. Keep in mind that the formerly enslaved may have changed their names after slavery. Maybe Robert Carter's ancestors weren't Carters at all. So I must examine several different surnames in concert with the others' family trees in combination with DNA to find the truth. So DNA is one possible thing, Through Lines is another. It's not the end all. But they may give me some hints on where to go from here. Darn, I found a problem. The genealogical proof standard says you've got to look at confounding data and explain it or do something with it. And I found a problem. 23andMe says my Uncle Dale Carter has a Y-DNA, the baby daddy paternity test, haplogroup of BM109. Men carrying BM109 spread far and wide below the Sahara Desert from Cameroon to Tanzania, and in the east from Egypt to South Africa. So, since men carry the same Y-DNA markers from father to son back to theoretical Adam, I'm looking for a 2 times great-grandfather who is black. These ethnicity estimates indicate that James H. from the William Carter Logsdon family is 100% European. He's got Germanic Europe, Scotland, England, Denmark, and Sweden. He's a white man. I found no DNA matches to Carters from the William Carters in Mount Vernon, Ohio. It could be that none of their descendants took a DNA test, or that my ancestors changed their name to Carter after slavery. There's something going on here. There could be females that are involved that I'm not taking into consideration right now. So let's move on to the next step. Crossing my fingers, I'll find something good. All right, let's try another avenue. Check the fan club again for surnames. Search for Carters in places where Ella Roy's family might have lived, like Manassas in Prince William County, Virginia. That's where the devastating Civil War battles of Bull Run were fought. The only place I found a Robert and William Carter living together was in Manassas, Prince William County, Virginia, close to Albert and Alice Roy, who were living there in 1870. So see the rightmost box for this information. William Carter was about 53, and Robert Carter was listed as 13, indicating he was born around 1857, which is pretty close to what his death certificate reported. Who are the Jetts who were living with them? Could Lucy Jett be my Robert Carter's mother? I plugged the Jett surnames into DNA matching programs, then Through Lines to see if I could pinpoint who my blood family was. This is still a work in progress, but it is an exciting lead. I also found an 1870 census with the names of Albert and Alice Roy, who were living close to a fellow named Edgar Weir, W-E-I-R. He was the largest slave-owning family. He was a member of the largest slave-owning family in Prince William County. I actually visited the plantation in May of 2024. Those Roys lived with my Ella in Mount Vernon, Ohio in 1880, and my Robert Carter was in Mount Vernon as early as 1883. I'm just trying to gather all these names, right? And to see where they fit. Where are they in history, in the time and place in history? So that's what I'm doing here. It sounds like a lot of gobbledygook, but I'm trying to find the answer. So I also searched for Robert Carter in the District of Columbia, where Robert was born in 1859. I found lots of possible leads, But this is still a work in progress, meaning I haven't fully solved it. And so right now, we're going to move on to Ella Roy's parentage. We might have better luck there. Who was Ella Roy's daddy? Rumors said he was Columbus Delano, the former U.S. Secretary of the Interior under President Grant. They say he gave her expensive Tiffany lamps and furnishings and a paid-off house on West Vine Street in Mount Vernon, Ohio. Most of my family says Delano, who seconded the 1860 nomination of Abraham Lincoln and worked for many years in Washington, D.C., they say that he allegedly brought 6-year-old Ella, along with Albert and Alice Roy, from Virginia to be servants at Delano's sheep ranch in Mount Vernon, Ohio. That's this picture here. That's where they lived. So he left Washington in 1875, and my mom says he brought her grandmother Ella Roy with him at that time, and Albert and Alice Roy. So besides proof documents, what's the easiest way to prove or disprove lineage? DNA to the rescue. I built Columbus Delano's family tree to the present day after buying DNA test kits from my eldest elders, my siblings, and cousins. I administer 19 total DNA test kits, most on my maternal line. So my lineage should be easy to prove, right? I did find one Delano DNA match to me, but her 290-person tree is listed as private. Darn. But guess what? I pay an extra $10 each month to use something called Ancestry Pro Tools. This allows me to use the Shared Matches Pro to examine the trees of people who match me, and in this case, my private match named EM. 2 of EM and my matches in common had no trees, but a third one did have a tree that I could examine. Plus, my super testers also found a few matches to people who had Delanos in their tree, sharing about 14 to 27 centimorgans. So it is still possible that Columbus Delano was Ella's daddy. When I plugged Columbus Delano into through lines, I didn't get many matches, but that doesn't mean it's not worth exploring this possible connection further. I want my rich baby daddy, Delano kin, to show up. I'm just kidding, of course. I really just want to find the real facts. But anyway, I still have more leads to examine. What? What did you say? A centimorgan? What's that? Oh, you don't know what a centimorgan is? Centimorgans are a unit of measure that gives an idea of the closeness of a relationship between two people. Like inches are a unit of measure, right? They measure the size or the distance. A mile is a unit of measure. A centimorgan is used for DNA analysis, and it expresses the closeness, how close you are to a particular person. For example, look at the green boxes below. See all the lime green boxes? So you get about 3,471 centimorgans, or CMs, from each parent. You get between 1,272 and 2,365 centimorgans from each grandparent, and an average of 850 centimorgans from each great-grandparent. If you look in the purple boxes on the far right, look at the one on the very bottom. So in the bottom purple box, they estimate that 0 to 27 centimorgans roughly approximates a fourth cousin or a further back relationship, meaning they might share a third or further back great-grandparent. The smaller the relationship, the smaller the centimorgans, the more doubt that a true ancestor has been found. So this is a cool box from the Shared CM Project, version 2.0, updated 2017 from Blaine Bettinger. Very useful tool. Hopefully, you've been finding many new surnames through your research. Run the DNA match programs to see if any people with those same surnames match your DNA. Now you must find who your ancestors in common are. That's what it's all about, right? Try using the DNA Match Groups tool. You can label your matches in any number of ways, like by surname, birthplace, and specific account names. You can color code each of these groupings to make it easy to see at a glance how your matches might fit into your tree. So for example, I designate a rust-colored square labeled K for Knox County, Knox, County, Ohio, for every one of my 16 matches who has people in their tree who were born in Knox County, Ohio. A teal-colored A is for the 64 people born in Alexandria, Virginia, where my great-grandmother Ella Roy was born, and so on and so forth. I know these are rather small, but within the orange box right here, you see some of my matches. The first one is Joanne Fields. She's one of my super testers, one of my second cousins, and you see all these colored boxes on the right side near her name. And so the K stands for Knox, the green C stands for Carter's. Then I have, let's see that, I can't see the R, I think is for Roy's. The J is for Jackson's, and that A within orange or yellow orange is for Ames. So this is how you can see at a glance where these folks might fit into your family tree. So second cousin Joanne Fields shares 270 centimorgans with my Uncle Dale Carter. Their common ancestors may be Carters, Jacksons, Roys, and or Ames. Ames married into the Delano family, by the way. Some of these folks were born in Knox County, Ohio. Again, it's simply another tool that may help you visualize where your family fits into the grand scheme of things. Ooh, child, there is lots of potential information on this 1870 census. I like a lot of color, so hopefully you can bear with me, and I'll show you why I've used so much. Okay, I copied all the residents from Spotsylvania County. Doesn't that sound like something from Rocky and Bullwinkle, Spotsylvania County? Anyway, copied all the information onto a spreadsheet so I could manipulate the data. I sorted that census by surname, color-coded those names, like orange for my Roys, red for Jacksons, blue for Robinsons. Then I resorted the spreadsheet by household number so I could find close-by neighbors. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean these people live next to each other on the census, but they certainly lived nearby. If you don't know who the enslaver was, you might want to try this trick. It may work for you. Note whether there are any white people with big money real estate near your black family. They may have been your family's owners. Check their probate documents, their marriage documents, their everything documents to see if your enslaved family names appear in their records. On the top line, Elliot and Joseph Desjarnette were white farmers worth $35,000, and they lived close to my Roys, which again are shown in orange. At the very bottom, the Ware, W-A-R-E, or sometimes spelled W-E-I-R, surname on the bottom, was a big Prince William County enslaver, the largest, in fact. That becomes important later. Also note, a fun fact, in 1860, the average value of a slave was $1,500. That would be $57,000 in today's money, which means that the Desjarnettes would be worth $1.3 million. And guess how they made their money? Remember the fan club and look for neighbors who might have married into your family, friends, associates, neighbors. For example, the Paynes in yellow live nearby in Spotsylvania, and they later married into our Roys and were living in Mount Vernon, Ohio. Note the Albert and Agnes in the Roy and Paynes family. So those names are reused, and they're not really that common of names for enslaved people. So I think it's important to look at that. Similar given names might also be a sign that the neighbors were family members. So keep all these things in mind when you're searching to break down your brick walls. This is one of several probate pages for Elliot Desjardins where he mentions several enslaved people and land and money willed to his family members in 1857. Several of the enslaved people mentioned match the Roy family names I'm looking for, and this is an exciting, fun fact. Oh my gosh. I'm reading the transcription. Da la 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 la. My daughter Mary Hampton, who intermarried with Doc Nelson S. Waller of Kunta Kinte fame. If any one of you, and I know y'all did, see the miniseries Roots, or you read the story Roots, Kunta Kinte was taken from his home in Africa and brought to America. And guess where he landed? In Spotsylvania County, Virginia. And he was owned by the Waller family. So is my family connected with the Kunta Kinte folks from the 1700s? This was just so interesting to find the enslaved names that I'm looking for, which is Peter Roy, I'm looking for Matilda, I'm looking for Stapleton, Jacob. These are all names that are found in various censuses that may be pertinent to my family. And just the thrill that, my gosh, they may have been with Kunta Kinte. Who knows? I'm hoping to find out. DNA to the rescue. My super tester's DNA found some wonderful new cousins. I contacted those DNA matches, who probably share my Roy heritage in Manassas, Prince William County, and Fauquier and Loudoun counties in Virginia. I invited them to my private Roy Carter Facebook page and have exchanged emails and phone calls with them to determine who our common ancestors are. Many of these people are expert family historians like Lynne Naylor, who have written books that have helped me find more information about my family. In 2023, I met for the first time with several close cousins in Mount Vernon, Ohio, where my mother, Mary Carter, was born. So keep on helping each other by contacting, and when someone asks you for assistance, I'm sure that all of us who are listening here help as much as we can. We've got to find all of our relatives, all of our ancestors, and we've got to do it ourselves. If you haven't explored Freedmen's Bureau records from the 1865 to 1872 time period, you are missing the mark. FamilySearch.org, Ancestry.com, and my favorite, the Smithsonian portal, can shed sunlight on our search for our Black ancestors. And every Friday, Dr. Shelley Murphy conducts a live online session called Freedmen's Fridays, where she talks about how to use these informative records. So that's 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Friday. You must register to be invited to the Friday Fest because we want to make sure that no unhelpful people join the crowd, if you know what I mean. You can ask specific questions about your brick walls as they relate to Freedmen's records. There's a lively DNA discussion after that with Shannon Christmas, often into the wee hours of the morning. This is great stuff. I input Virginia as the location and Roy as the last name using the Smithsonian portal on the slide. Can I find my Ella Roy's mother using Freedmen's Bureau records? So here's what I learned about Ella Roy's mother. In the upper left square, there were 5 women named Roy in the Alexandria Freedmen's Bureau records. Only one, Agnes Roy, fits the bill the closest of all of them that are there. Now, if you look at the upper right square, surrounded by green, we see that infant Ella Roy, born December 1866, and a woman named Agnes Roy were living in the East Capitol Hill Barracks, according to hospital records. Does that mean they were related? Not necessarily, but the 2 top boxes seem to indicate there might be a connection. In the center right, we see that a work contract was issued for an Agnes Roy and child with someone named Walker Reed Milan. It was dated the 15th of December, 1866, which was 2 weeks before Ella was actually born. So this gave me some thoughts that Milan maybe could have been Agnes's former enslaver. And maybe he was also Ella's dad, if Ella is the child mentioned in the contract, which we don't know that for sure. The lower left, I found a register of deaths which indicated that Agnes Roy died March 14, 1874 in Manassas, Prince William County, Virginia. She was an unmarried farmer, and her brother was listed as Albert Roy. There's no mention of a daughter named Ella. This record lends more credence to my mother's statement that Albert Roy was Ella Roy's uncle and her guardian, who brought Ella with him to Mount Vernon, Ohio by 1880. Because again, if this Agnes was her mom, Agnes died in 1874, so Ella could have been hanging out with her uncle Albert. Albert and his wife and Ella were working for politician Columbus Delano. So this record was very important. Was Delano Ella's daddy, like my mama thinks? Could DNA tell me more? So there's a lot of discussion in the book that was just issued, Finding Grammie's Secrets. There's a lot of discussion about their lives with Delano, or Delano, I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced. I spent the whole day in his former home where Ella lived. Yes, I did. 2023, I took a genealogy trip, and the building is now owned by, actually, the property that Delano used to own is owned by the Mount Vernon Nazarene University, and they were fantastic. They gave me a tour of the whole thing. I stayed all day, just imagining my great-grandmother was there at the age of 14, living there on the 3rd floor. And anyway, I've got a lot of that in the book, and it just gives me chills every time I think about it. It was such a special, special event. What is so neat about DNA? Why do you keep going on and on about it? Well, it can uncover so many different connections. On this slide from Ancestry.com, a woman named Kaylee administers 2 test kits, RP and EP. They both match my cousin Kenora's DNA. EP has a linked tree containing 11,194 people. Hello! He had Carters and Roys from King William and Fauquier County, Virginia. And they had Jacksons, who became another surname of interest. I'd been seeing Jacksons mentioned in my DNA matches for years, but Kaylee's EP and RP brought me closer to understanding who those Jacksons were. The 23andMe.com company may be in financial trouble right now, but they still offer a very helpful product. The blue box below on the upper left indicates that my Uncle Dale Carter and a fellow named Tim both have African Y DNA. And that's helpful for this particular case that I'm working on. The green box in the center lists the DNA matches to Dale who have Carters in their profile. The purple box at the right shows the matches and their relationship to both Dale and Tim. Very, very useful tool. The pink box in the lower left indicates that Dale and Tim are probably second cousins once removed. The lower right box is 23andMe's version of a family tree. It calculates how Tim and his close family are connected to Dale Carter, and I presume that 23andMe looks directly at the specific chromosomes that the various men share to make that determination. So this is a lot of really useful information. Again, it's too bad 23andMe may not be long for this world. While I think MyHeritage.com could be the best all-around DNA company for Europeans, it doesn't have a large enough Afrocentric database to be useful for finding connections to American slavery. MyHeritage does have a chromosome browser, unlike Ancestry.com. That browser pinpoints how DNA matches are related to the 22 chromosomes we get from each of our parents. The red lines in the red box at left show the 52 segments that Uncle Dale and I share. Jonathan matches me and Dale, another 30 centimorgans on chromosome 10, along with Bob. They're actually father and son. Vonda, the yellow lines, shares 2 segments with us, one on chromosome 4 and the other on chromosome 8. So what? The ideal is to find people who overlap segments which might indicate they share a common ancestor with us. Unfortunately, none of the DNA matches I selected showed any triangulated segments with me. However, I took the opportunity to search for William Carter, who was supposedly the name of my great-great-grandfather. Hooray! As shown in the blue box at right, I found many William Carters from Virginia, born around 1830. Guess I'll have a lot of homework tonight. GEDmatch.com accepts DNA raw data from all the major companies. There are so many free tools as shown in the box in purple at the left, and even more tools that only cost $10 a month. If you want to go to the next level, use GEDmatch.com. In this case, I decided to look at the GEDCOM pedigree tree for a fellow who has tested on all the companies like me. I see him everywhere. And I can see that many of his ancestors lived in Stafford, Virginia, near some of mine. So I can now research his family names to see if that's where our connection is. Try GEDmatch.com. Again, there are privacy issues that can be problematic, but just check it out for yourself. It may help you an awful lot. Okay, are you ready for this? It's getting really exciting for me. This chart shows 10 descendants of William Henry Jackson who match my family's DNA, from a low of 9 centimorgans of relationship to 55 centimorgans as shown in the yellow boxes. Again, I got this Jackson name from those previous, the EP and the RP that were managed by Kaylee. And so when I find a new surname, I put them in my tree. I look and get as many documents as I can for them to see how we are related. So I'm theorizing that William Henry Jackson, born 1851 and died 1925, had babies by 2 sisters. My second great-grandmother, Agnes Roy, birthed my great-grandmother, Ella, when she was about 19. Agnes's likely sister, Mary Jane Roy, had 6 children by William Henry Jackson after Agnes died in 1874. So this is coming together. So what it is on the left-hand side in orange, these are my people. You've got Agnes Roy, who's my great-great-grandmother. Underneath that is Ella Roy, my great-grandmother. Then there's Bessie Carter. Arthur Carter is my grandfather. This is me, Kathy Marshall, and then I've got my kids down below. And then the very bottom one, it has more information about how many centimorgans are shared. And so all of the yellow boxes along the bottom, these are actual living people with whom I have DNA matches, and it shows the centimorgans. So these are my family members in yellow, and above that are other folks who have these Jacksons in their tree. So William Henry Jackson looks like a really good candidate. And so I'm going to keep working and trying to find out exactly how all of these relationships occurred, how they migrated or how they knew each other, and how they all got to Mount Vernon, Ohio. That's going to be my ultimate find. So anyway, it's coming closer, and DNA was super helpful in finding this out. We certainly covered a lot of ground in just 40 minutes. Robert Carter's paternal Y-DNA determined his father had to be African. So even though Robert's death certificate said his father was W.M. Carter, and a W.M. Carter and 7 other Carters were found in Knox County, Ohio, their DNA origins were likely white and therefore not what I was looking for. The 1870 Manassas census had a William and Robert Carter living near Albert Roy in a household with lots of people surnamed Jett. Was Lucy Jett Robert Carter's mother? I haven't proven who Robert's parents are yet, but I'm getting closer. Freedmen's Bureau records identified Ella's mom as being Agnes Roy, and DNA suggests that William Henry Jackson is likely my Ella Roy's father. Was my Ella being raised by the Jacksons while her mother Agnes was farming somewhere in Manassas prior to her death in 1874? This case is still a work in progress, and I wish it were done. I wish I knew all the answers, but I do still have many potential avenues to follow. So, everyone listening, if you have Roy or Carter kin from Virginia or DC and you want to chat, please contact me, Kathy at KathyLynneMarshall.com. See you on the next slide. Thank you so much for attending this DNA case study presentation. I hope the hints we talked about today will help you find your ancestors, and I really hope you will share your research results with your family and others. If you need help getting started, feel free to check out the handy tips and tricks for researching and writing your family histories in the Solving Your Mystery appendix in each of my books that are found on Amazon. Drop me a line at Kathy at KathyLynneMarshall.com if you have any questions about this in-progress presentation. Well, that's all we've got for today. And if you're interested in finding out which of Grammie's secrets I was able to unravel, please feel free to check out my latest book. It may give you ideas on strategies that will help you with your ancestral search. Now, are you ready for a question and answer session?